One thing that wireless networks do that makes it hard to do certain types of security testing is they really act like switched networks, because what you're doing is really transmitting just to particular MAC addresses. And so, what we want to do is try to get around that a little bit, and we're going to do ARP spoofing. Now, ARP is the address resolution protocol. It's used to translate IP addresses to MAC addresses. And the MAC address is the media access control address that resides on your hardware, and it's used to actually communicate at layer 2 of the protocol stack, meaning that if I'm going to communicate with you locally, I'm going to use your MAC address. So if I want to get somebody else's traffic in order to do some diagnostics or in order to test various things, I need to get around that transmitting just to the MAC address. So what I'm going to do is do some spoofing. We're going to use Ettercap in order to do that. In this case, I'm going to do unified sniffing. And actually, there's one thing I need to do before this. I need to set a variable in the kernel. Now, the variable in the kernel has to do with retransmitting the messages that are coming in. And what I need to do is actually be able to pass messages back out to the network once they come into me. So I'm going to set the net.ipv4.ip_forward to allow packet forwarding. So I'm going to say sysctl-w net.ipv4.ip_forward was 1. So now I've set my forwarding, which means when I do the ARP spoofing, I'm going to get messages in from somebody else's system, but I'm going to pass them back out to the network so that the actual recipient gets the messages and nothing really looks unusual here. So I'm going to do unified sniffing. In this case, I'm just going to do it over my Ethernet interface. And what I need to do is bring up my hosts list. And so I'm going to scan for hosts. We're going to probe the network to see what we've got. Now I can bring up my host list, and I can just select different MAC addresses or different systems. I'm going to add some to target 1. I'm going to add some to target 2. Then what I can do is go to MITM, which is man in the middle, and I can do ARP poisoning. I'm going to sniff remote connections and just close that. Now what I'm going to see here is traffic that is actually destined to those addresses. I should be able to run TCP dump here. And what I should see is traffic to all of those other addresses that I normally wouldn't see because they aren't coming to my MAC address. What's happening is my system is now sending out what's called gratuitous ARPs, and those are indicating that those other IP addresses are actually at my MAC address. So anybody who's trying to send any traffic to those IP addresses is going to be sending them, and you can see the is that messages there. Those are actually my system sending out these ARP responses that haven't been asked for. And that makes sure that the other systems on the network actually fill their ARP cache up with this information so they don't ever bother asking for the real information. They're just being told this, and they're generally going to believe it. Now, when I'm all done, I can stop the man in the middle attacks. And what this is going to do now is stop the gratuitous ARPs. And so we will no longer get the traffic that is actually destined for those other IP addresses.